Alright guys, so welcome back to another Discord bot video. So I'm going to show you guys how to deploy a Discord bot to Heroku. We're going to be using Heroku because it's free. But this is just a general, this is just a temporary solution for most people a lot of times because Heroku itself does have limitations. And right now, by default, you actually get 550 hours on Heroku that you can use. But obviously, I think that's only about, I think roughly 22, 23 days or so. So obviously, you're left with, 8 days left of your bot being offline. And of course, it says over here, if you add your credit card, you can get an additional 450 hours. It's not going to charge you. On my other Heroku account, I've added my credit card, and I have 1,000 hours, but I, never even use Heroku. Unless it's for, small apps, of course, but it's really easy to use when you're deploying a small app. But yeah, I've never been charged before. So unless you're subscribing to some premium service or whatever, then you're gonna get charged. But you should not get charged though. Okay. Anyways, so yeah, Heroku itself is a cloud service that allows you to deploy applications. You can read all about it on Google, but we're just gonna focus on the main part of the tutorial. Okay, so the first thing that you want to make sure you do is to create a Heroku account. I just created a brand new account for this tutorial, and I'm going to be using this for my future tutorials. And what you're going to do next is you're going to go ahead and click on create a new app, and we're going to call this whatever we want. I'm going to just call this Discord.js tutorial bot. And then you're going to select your region after that. And so obviously I'm in the United States, so I'm going to select United States. There's only 2 as of now, so just select whichever one you want. And just click create app. What is it? Okay, there we go. Okay, so now you should be brought to this dashboard. And over here on the deploy tab, okay, it's going to ask you down here, or it's going to let you choose how you want to deploy your code, how you want to deploy your project. You can either use the Heroku Git CLI, you can use GitHub itself, or you can use container registry. I've never used this before. I've only used the Heroku Git CLI as well as GitHub. But we're going to use GitHub to deploy our code. Okay, now this itself requires you to, 1, make sure you have a GitHub account. It's free to sign up for. Okay, it allows you to pretty much push all of your commits into a remote repository that either only you can see or anyone else can see. So a lot of open source projects are hosted on GitHub. Okay, and I always recommend people to use version control systems like Git, so that way you can, keep track of your changes and revert to previous changes whenever you want. It's really nice. Okay, so yeah, just make sure you create a GitHub account. It's very easy. It's free. Okay, and it's very easy to use. And don't worry, I'm going to walk you through the steps. Okay, so over here we're going to select GitHub. We're going to go back to Heroku, select connect to GitHub, and it's going to over here connect to GitHub. It's going to open up a pop-up. Okay, and right over here, we're done. We're connected to GitHub. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and select the repository that we want to use to deploy our app. Basically, this repository is going to be our main code that we are using to deploy into our Heroku instance. Okay, so over here, I already have a repository created already, but I'm going to show you exactly what you're going to do. So let's say, for example, if you already have a Discord bot project already, and you have not used Git or GitHub, what you're going to do is you're going to go ahead and click on new, and you're just going to create a repository. So we're going to call this sample repo Discord bot. Okay, and you're just going to give a description. We're going to leave that alone, and you can either set it to public or private. Okay, you're going to click on create repository, and then what you're going to do is you're going to clone this repo. Actually, no. So again, if you already have a project already, so let's just assume. So let's just go into, let's just open up my, let's go back a little bit. Let's make a directory called sample. Let's just match this this repository. It doesn't have to be the same name, but we're going to do it just to, make things nice for us. So I'm going to cd into this repository or this directory. So right now, this directory itself is not a Git repository. Okay, so if you're developing your code on your on your computer, and if you've never used Git before, to initialize your repository with Git, well, before we even do this, you want to make sure you have Git installed. Almost forgot. So make sure you go to git-sem.com and just make sure you install Git I'm on Windows, so I'm going to install it for Windows, but obviously it works on Mac as well as Linux. Okay, so you should not have any problems installing on those. In fact, actually, I think it's actually really easy to install on Mac, but just make sure you have Git installed. Okay, so assuming you have Git installed, and you can verify that by just typing Git, and it's going to show you a bunch of different a bunch of different flags that you can pass in, a bunch of different commands that you can pass in. We're going to do git init, and we're going to specify the folder that we want to initialize. In this case, I'm already inside the folder that I want to initialize, so I'm going to do dot, which means the current folder that we're in. And there you go, initialized empty git repository in c/users/anson/documents/sample repo discord bot, and it's going to create this .git folder for you. Okay, and you can see it over here. Cool. That basically means that our repository is set up, but it doesn't have a remote. What that means is it doesn't reference any remote repository. So you're going to go ahead and just copy this link, and we're going to do git remote origin URL, and I think it's git remotes. I always forget. Hold on. Git remote origin. I always forget what it is. It's git remote. Oh, add origin. There we go. There we go. So I'm sorry. I always forget this command, but I've been doing this for like so long, but I always forget it. But it's git remote add origin, and then the URL of the repository, which is, you can just copy right over here. Okay. And if we do git remote origin URL, or git remote -v. There we go. It's git remote -v, and it's going to tell you what the remote is. Okay, so there we go. So now we can actually make changes to this repository. So what you're going to do, so obviously, if you already have your Discord bot already, and once you've initialized your current directory with Git, what you're going to do is you're going to do a couple of commands. So I'm just going to go ahead and open this up in Visual Studio Code. And the first thing that you want to make sure you also have is you want to make sure that your project is also initialized with NPM. So make sure you have NPM. Make sure you have a package.json file, and if you don't, just do npm init-y, and it's going to create a package.json file for you. And you need to make sure that you have all of your dependencies listed in here. So basically, for example, if you have a small project, you might not have that many dependencies, but you need to make sure you're installing it locally inside this repository. So let's say, for example, if I am using discord.js, I'm going to do npm I, which stands for install, discord.js. Okay, and what's going to happen is it's going to generate a node modules folder for us, and it's going to add discord.js as a dependency over here. Okay, it created this dependencies property, which maps to an object, and this object is going to contain all of your dependencies that your project needs. Okay, the reason why we need this package.json file is because Heroku, what it's going to do is it's going to run tests. It's going to then, after everything is done building, right, if everything went well, I'm sorry, actually, what it's going to do first, it's going to attempt to install the dependencies, right? And if all the dependencies have successfully installed, it's going to then finally run the start script. So you want to make sure you have a start script. Okay, so start script is going to be the command node, and you want to specify the path to the main entry point of your file. So let's say, for example, if I have a folder called source, and if I have a file called bot.js, or main.js or whatever, then I'm going to do node / so source src bot.js. This is the path, the relative path to my main file, and all this is going to do is just going to say hello world. Okay, and then once you have everything, assuming that you've installed all of your dependencies, remember you need to make sure that you reinstall all of your dependencies, because you need to make sure all of them are listed in here. If they're not, then some issues are going to happen when you're running certain parts of your code. Like the build should still succeed, but if you try to run, let's say, a command that depends on, some other npm package, it's probably going to throw an error because it didn't install that as a dependency. Okay, so once you have all this, you want to make sure you have the Gitignore file, and you want to make sure you type in node_modules. Okay, because what this is going to do is it's going to ignore the node modules folder. So when you actually commit this, so I'm going to show you real quick what it does. Okay, And we're gonna do initial commit. Nothing useful. What's going on? Oh, hold on. I'm gonna have to reopen my terminal real quick. cd docs. Whoops. cd sample repo bots. Okay, so I'm gonna do git commit initial commit, and we're gonna have to do git push set upstream origin master. Okay, now on our remote repository, it's going, if we refresh, it's going to have our latest code on here. And you're going to see that the node modules folder is not on here because we don't want to commit the node modules folder. Okay, because this folder is really large. Okay, and if you have more dependencies, your commits are going to take, your pushes are going to take very long. Okay, and you don't want to commit that to GitHub. Okay, so to solve that, we basically create a Gitignore file and we add node modules to there. Okay, so this is, we're nowhere near done yet. I just want to show you this for people who already have their bots ready. So what I'm going to show you next is I'm going to show you how to connect your current, what we're going to do is right now, I currently already have a repository set up for my bot. There's a couple things that I need to actually explain before we do anything else. Okay, I just wanted to show the people who have never used Git how to actually, push the changes to GitHub. And all we've done so far was we did git add dot, and what that does is it stages all of the files in the current directory. Okay, so for example, it staged everything in source, gitignore, package.json, package.json, and you can also choose to stage certain files too. But I just did git add dot so that way it would stage everything to save some time. Okay, there are still a couple things that we have to do, and I'm going to explain that in this next part. So we're going to go ahead and exit. Okay, and I'm going to go back into Discord. I think, what was it called again? V12 Discord bot. Okay, there we go, right over here. Okay, so right now I already have my I already have this project connected with my remote repository. Obviously, it's out of sync because I have some changes that I need to, stage, because I have a bunch of changes that I made. I just never staged them. And normally I wouldn't, bundle up all of these, but I was just kind of like out of track because I was more focused on the tutorials. But what you can do is you can also just, commit each file one at a time. So if you use a text editor like Visual Studio Code, you can actually review all of your changes. So on this side over here, this was what the file looked like before. This was what the file looked like after my last stage. And then this is what it looks like now after I made the recent changes. And you can see it's a lot of changes, of course. So, but I'm not going to focus so much on, how to properly commit. I'm just showing you guys how to get the bot to deploy on Heroku. So I'm just going to go ahead and do git add. Okay, and you're going to see that everything went from changes to stages before everything was over here. And we're just going to do git commits, and we're going to do updating repository. And my repository is public. Okay, so you're going to see everything here. Now, before we do anything else, I need to actually mention one thing. So what I did not mention from the last example was you want to make sure that in case you accidentally stage your node modules folder, you want to make sure that you remove it. Okay, because let's say, for example, if I accidentally did git add and it also added my node underscore modules folder, you want to make sure you do git rm-r -- cache and then the path to the node modules folder, and this will remove node modules from it being staged, and then you can add it to the gitignore folder, or I'm sorry, the gitignore file, and that way every single time you stage your changes, the node modules folder will be ignored. Okay, now one more thing that I need to mention is you also want to make sure the .env file is added to the Gitignore folder. Okay, if you did not watch my previous tutorials, I'll explain what this .env file is for. So over here, I basically have two variables. I have a variable for my bot underscore token, and I have the prefix variable for my bot prefix. And on line 6 in my bot.js file, which is my main code over here, I'm referencing process.env.botToken. And basically what I'm doing here is I'm loading up the environment variable with the .env module, and I'm calling the config function, and that's going to load up my environment variables Okay, so basically my variable over here is going to be able to be referenced over here using the process.env bot underscore token property. Okay, and obviously you want to do this because you want to make sure that you're keeping your bot token secure. That's why what I'm doing here is I'm adding the .env file to the .gitignore. So when I push, my token will not be exposed on GitHub. Okay, and since it's a public repository, you can see that anyone can see it, and if they see my bot token, they can use it and log in as my bot, and they can pretty much compromise my bot, compromise my server if the bot has certain permissions and whatnot. Okay, all right. So just make sure that your node underscore modules folder is not staged. So I already showed you the command to use: git rm-r -cache, and notice how it's saying it did not match any files because I don't have it staged. Okay, and make sure that you have your bot token set up as an environment variable. Okay, so in this case, make sure you install .env and make sure that you call require and then pass in .env as a string and call the .config function, and then that way your environment variable will be loaded from the .env file. Okay, so if you don't want to set up an environment variable, you don't have to. You can just like, let's say for example, if you want to keep your repository private and no one else will see it, that's fine. You can just pass in the token itself, but again, I don't recommend it. Okay, but if you just want to prove that it works, then you can go ahead and do that. Okay, but if you have any issues with anything, just join my Discord server and I'll try my best to help you out, or someone else might be able to in case if I don't see the question. Okay, one more thing that I'm going to do is, since I don't have a database set up on Heroku yet, I'm actually going to go ahead and omit the database call. So I'm going to go over to, I think it's registry, and I'm going to, actually no, it's the ready event. So I know this might seem like really daunting, but don't worry, like this is just from my Discord JS tutorial. But I'm going to comment out this database call because I don't want to deal with that yet. Okay, because we don't have the database set up. Otherwise, it's going to throw an error inside that over there. Okay, so I think everything should be good, right? Just make sure your Gitignore file has two things: node underscore modules and .env. Okay, make sure all of your dependencies are listed inside here. Okay, in my case, I have 5 dependencies. So if it's not listed here, just make sure you reinstall it again using the npm install command, or npm-i for short. Okay. And with that being said, the last thing that we need to do is we need to set up a Procfile. This file is just a simple file. You need to make sure it's capital P and then the rest is lowercase, ROC file. Make sure there's no extension, so you can't have it as .txt or .js. Like if I do .txt, it's probably gonna give you some issues. I know in the past it's given a lot of people issues, but inside here it's just gonna be a one-line command. You're gonna do worker. And I'm going to zoom in just in case people miss it, but it's going to be worker, semicolon, oh, I'm sorry, worker colon, not semicolon, colon, and then node. And you want to make sure you're passing in the path to your main bot file. In my case, it's in the source folder. So I'm going to do /, because my Procfile is in the root folder, and we want to reference the source folder. So we're going to do source bot.js. And what this is going to do is it's going to set up a worker so our bot can stay online 24/7. If you don't have a Procfile, it's going to give you like some kind of port binding error. You'll know exactly what that error is when you see it, but make sure you have the Procfile. Okay? And the last thing, I think there's one more thing I have to do actually. I keep forgetting, but I want to make sure I get everything before I even finish this video. You want to also make sure you have the start script. So you're going to basically go inside package.json. Okay, these are scripts that Heroku will run, but mainly it's going to run the start script. Okay, so you can honestly not worry about test or dev. You can just worry about start. I have the dev script, so I can just do npm run dev, so it'll be easier for me instead of just typing nodemon and then the path to my bot.js file. But we're going to go ahead and do node, and the same thing, /source bot.js, because my bot.js file is in the source folder. Okay, and I think that should be it. Okay, let me just double check just to make sure everything is good. So I'm going to do npm run start. So this command is what Heroku is going to execute. Okay, and we're going to go ahead and look at the logs later. Okay, so now that we're done, I'm gonna go and just do another git add, and I'm gonna do git commits, fix some changes, and I'm gonna do a git push. And I'm gonna type in my password. That was wrong. Whoops. Okay, it should be good. Okay, great. So we've made a commit. If I refresh, you're gonna see all of our files, and you see how the node modules folder is not there. Okay, package lock.json, package.json, Procfile, whoops, Gitignore. Okay, there's no .env file, which is good. Don't want that exposed to the public. Again, you only have to worry about that if your repository is public. A lot of you might want to keep your bots private, so you don't really have to worry so much about in case if it gets committed there. Okay, so now that we're done here, the next thing that we have to do is we have to go back to Heroku, and in case you, again, remember, make sure you have a Heroku account. We're gonna go to deploy. Okay, we've connected Heroku with GitHub earlier, and what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna search for this Discord.js -version 12 bot. Okay, and you're gonna type in whatever repository that you created earlier. Let me actually refresh real quick. So we should do Discord.js search, and I have right over here Discord.js -YouTube tutorials. Oh wait, no, that's the wrong one. Version 12 bot. There we go. Okay, so that's gonna connect. And if it gives you an error, it's mostly because your repository is empty. So if you try to connect before there's anything inside the repository, it's going to give you an error. So make sure you follow the same steps that I showed you on how to make changes to your remote repository by staging on your local repository, committing, and then pushing. Okay, you need to make sure you're doing all three of those things. And then once you push, try reconnecting, and it should not give you any issues. So what I'm going to do here is, over here, automatic deploys. It's going to say enable automatic deploys from GitHub. And basically what this means is every single time we make a push to the master branch or whatever branch we want, it's going to basically deploy our bot automatically. So we don't have to manually go into Heroku and restart it. It's going to pull the changes from the master branch, and it's going to do another build, it's going to do another npm install, and it's going to restart our bot for us. So we're going to make sure we enable it. And you can also change the branch. In this case, I'm only on the master branch right now. Okay, this is basically the main branch, okay? If you're not really advanced, don't worry so much about branches. Just make sure you select master branch and it should be fine. Okay, but you can also, disable it, and you can manually choose which branch you want to. I only have one branch, so we're going to leave it like that. Okay, so that should be it. And what we're going to do next, I think this should be just it. It should not do anything. Okay, so we actually need to make another change to our repository. So basically, every single time you want to start a new build, I'm sure there are actually some commands that you can use on Heroku. Let me actually see real quick. Heroku one. I'm actually not sure about the commands that Heroku has, but I'm pretty sure if you just do a quick Google on the Heroku commands on building, it shouldn't be too. I'm pretty sure you can definitely do that though. But what we're gonna do is every single time we want to make a new build and we want to restart our Heroku build, all we're gonna do is we're just gonna make a simple commit. So let's say, for example, I'm just gonna do. I didn't really change anything, but I'm just going to just add a space just to show you guys. So we're gonna do initial commit. Okay, push. Okay. Whoops. Okay, so that's gonna push, and notice how over here on latest activity, you're gonna see that it's going to have some logs in just a sec. You can see on our remote project we're gonna have 5 commits, and in here it should anytime it should spin up over here. Discord.js version 12. Okay, there we go. So it's gonna say my email, build in progress, and we can view the build progress. Okay, and you can kind of look through it too. You can kind of see what it's doing in order. So you can see how it's basically creating our runtime environments. That's what Heroku does behind the scenes. It's installing the binaries. It's resolving the node version. In this case, version 12. Okay, it's installing dependencies for us. Okay, and it says added 65 packages. And then, excuse me. And yeah, there you go. The build succeeded. And okay, we're great. And you can see how it says Procfile declares type worker. and default type for build pack is web. So now we can go over to view logs, and we can actually look at our logs, and we can see that we actually have an error. And the reason why we have this error is because it's going to say, I think it's an invalid token. Well, actually, wait a minute. Why is it saying MongoDB? Because I'm pretty sure I didn't actually configure the... I actually omitted the database, but... Oh, right over here. Excuse me. But actually, that shouldn't have worked, though. Because I actually... Hold on, I gotta fix this real quick, because... Okay, yeah, I think... Okay, over here. I gotta make another change. The reason why so a couple things. One, we need to do a couple more things, because we need to actually set our environment variable on Heroku. Okay, but the reason why we need to do that is because we don't have the .env file. Okay, but don't worry about it. So right now, let's just do this quick fix. So I actually had required the database file, and it was trying to connect to my database, and since we don't have that set up, we can't connect to it. So I'm going to save that, and hopefully this itself should get rid of that database error. So I'm just going to say git commits, fixed database issue. Okay, git push. Okay. Awesome, okay. Alright, cool. Let's go back up here. So a new build should start up. So remember, every single time we push, a new build is going to spin up. Okay, now, one thing that I will recommend is you don't want to, push to your master branch for every single little change you do. And this is why you should consider learning Git and GitHub. Because typically in the best practices usually is you have the master branch and you have a develop branch, and you want to push your changes to the develop branch, and once you're done, you can review those changes. Once you've ensured that everything works well, you're going to take those changes from the develop branch and you're going to create a pull request so you can merge all the changes from the develop branch to master branch. I know that might not make sense, and I know you guys just want to focus on deploying, but I just want to mention that for people who may have used Git and GitHub before. Okay, but don't worry so much about that right now. So let's just go over to activity. It should say build succeeded, deployed, and let's go to our logs, and it should have got rid of the why is it not auto scrolling? It should have gotten rid of the hold on, why are my logs not showing? I just want to make sure the database error is gone, but I don't know why it's not I want to see the full logs real quick. Oh, what? Okay, anyways. Okay, so I'm pretty confident that the database issue should have gotten fixed. So what we're gonna do is you want to make sure you go over to settings now, and this should be the last thing. This is the second to last thing that we need to do. You want to configure a environment variable. To do that, you're gonna go over here. Okay, and this is our Heroku instance environment variables. So remember how over here we set up an environment variable over here? We're going to do the same exact thing. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and do bot_token. You want to make sure it's the same exact thing. The reason why is because over here, right, it's going to reference that bot_token environment variable. The reason why we need to set it on Heroku is because we did not commit the .env file. Typically, .env should be used for development, and what you should do on the production server, in this case Heroku is technically our production server because we are deploying the production ready application. On the production server, you set the environment variables yourself. Okay, but again, if you want to commit the .env file, you can. Just make sure that on GitHub itself, it's your repository is private. Okay, but I highly recommend setting the environment variable on GitHub because it's much more safer. So we're gonna add it, and our bot should restart. So yeah, it's gonna restart. Okay, there shouldn't be any. Okay, great. So everything works now, and you're gonna see that our bot is actually online, and I don't have anything running on my terminal. Okay. So let's just look at the logs. You can see that obviously the table is messed up because it's this is like just it's not going to be exactly like the way we wanted it in our actual terminal, but that's fine. Okay, we don't have to worry so much about that. But you can see our bot is actually logged in. Now there's one more thing. You're going to notice that in I think about a couple more seconds, it's going to give you an error, and I'm going to wait a little bit. We have a lot of time. Okay. Okay, so I made sure this time I didn't miss anything. I made sure to cover everything. And I'm gonna go over everything one last time, so don't worry. But I wanted to show that error with the port bind 60 thing. I mean, you saw it earlier. It actually showed up, but I didn't mention anything. Okay, there we go. So it's gonna give you this error, right? Okay, so error waiting for process to terminate, no child process, state change from starting to crashed, and then you can just read all of it. But basically, if you get this error, that's an issue with your Procfile. Okay, we have our Procfile. Okay, so the first step is make sure you have your Procfile. Like I said, you need to make sure it's case sensitive, right? So you need to make sure it's a capital P. The rest of the letters are lowercase. Make sure it's a one-liner, worker, colon, node, and then the path to the bot file that you want to run. Okay, once that's good, make sure it's also committed to GitHub as well. Make sure it's committed and pushed to GitHub. And what you're going to do is you're going to go over to Overview, and you're going to click on Configure Dynos. And typically, when you just add your Procfile, it might take like about 5 or more minutes or so to actually show up. But it should, if you have your Procfile configured correctly, it's going to show up over here as worker. We're going to go ahead and just click on Edit on the web, and we're going to turn it off. And over here, okay, there we go. And over here on worker, we're going to turn that on. Whoops. And confirm. Okay, so that itself should automatically restart our bot, I think. There we go. Yep, it's going to restart it. And it's going to say scaled to web, free worker, free. Okay? And basically, this is going to prevent our bot from sleeping. Okay? Now, typically, when you run web apps, like let's say if you're running a backend with Heroku, usually you can just leave it as a web. But every 2 hours, your application is gonna fall asleep, which will actually save your backend. It's gonna save your hours, but sometimes you might want it to run continuously. So state change from starting to up. Our bot's still offline though, or actually just went back online. Great. All right, cool. And you can see that it just went back online, just like that. And of course, I can actually just use. I think I should be able to use my commands. The only thing that doesn't work is the database because I didn't configure that. But for a future video, I'll show you guys how to set up a database with Heroku. So let me actually see something real quick. I want to just do a quick little command just to make sure this works. So we're going to go ahead and do roll. So question mark roll. That itself, I think that gave an error. Oh, you know why? It's because I don't have my prefix set. That's why. So I'm going to go back to config vars. We're going to do prefix, and we're going to do question mark. Okay, that should be good enough. So our bot's going to restart, and that's fine. Yeah, like I said, I would say just Google some Heroku commands that you can use from the terminal, because obviously you don't want to always, make useless commits or useless changes just to redeploy your bot. I just don't know what the commands are because I don't really use Heroku too much. So this should work. There we go. Roll the 5, and all of my other commands should work. Okay. Like I said, the only thing that won't work is the database because we have not set up MongoDB. Okay. But yeah, I mean, I guess that's pretty much it. I made sure I covered practically every single case so far. So just to kind of recap what we did, we basically created a new Heroku app. We connected our Heroku app to our GitHub account. And we also connected it to the repository that we want our Heroku app to listen to changes from. Okay, so in this case, I have it listening to Discord.js version 12-bot. Okay, and this repository does not need to be public, by the way. You can keep it private and it'll still work because we've already connected our account to GitHub. Okay, we also set up automatic deploys, so every single time we make a change, we make a push to our GitHub repository. Right, Heroku is going to see those changes, and it's going to pull those changes. It's going to rerun all of the necessary scripts. Right, you saw in the logs earlier that it did what it needed to do to set up the Node.js runtime environment, and it installed all of our dependencies. Okay, so yeah, it's a lot, but I promise that I'm pretty sure we've covered practically everything that we need so far. If you have any additional issues, because yes, some issues may arise here and there. If you have any issues, just go ahead and join my Discord server, and I'll try my best to help you out. Or if I'm not able to get to you, someone else who has used Heroku will be able to. But yeah, like I said, hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. Hopefully it was informative. And yeah, I guess that's pretty much it. So I'll see you guys in my next video. Peace.